Well, folks, I'm sick. So to celebrate, we're going to be reviewing Pandemic and Pandemic Legacy Season 1. If you don't know what Pandemic is, then get up, go to your local library, hop on one of their computers, Google apartments for sale near me, and find one that you can afford so that you can stop living under that rock. Pandemic has sold over 5 million copies, and Pandemic Legacy Season 1 sits comfortably at the number 3 spot on Board Game Geek's highest rated games of all time. The franchise has popped off as hard as that one virus did in 2019, and now the base game has more expansions than coronavirus has mutations, as well as a handful of sequels for the Legacy version. The Pandemic franchise is the brainchild of a man named Matt Lecoq. And no, I'm not going to be making any penis jokes because 1, I respect the guy, and 2, I need to save room for coronavirus jokes. As of right now, he seems to be taking a page out of Vital Lacerda's book and is currently designing a game about combating climate change. So I think it's only fair that Vital meets him halfway and starts designing a game about fighting a global pandemic. Knowing Vital Lacerda, it would probably ship with 4 hazmat suits and the complete genome sequence for bubonic plague. Much like the announcements at grocery stores urging you to wear a mask because we're all in this together, Pandemic is a cooperative experience. The board is a map of the world, with high-profile cities connected to adjacent ones that allow both you, and people stuffed to the brim with viral loads, to travel between them quickly. Each city has a corresponding city card, as well as a color to delineate its region. You start by randomly distributing disease cubes of 4 separate colors all across the globe. You then place your player pawns in Atlanta, Georgia, deal a handful of city cards to each player, and then shuffle in a set amount of epidemic cards into the city card deck. On your turn, you take 4 actions, and then you draw 2 city cards, as well as a certain amount of infection cards, depending on how screwed you are. The 4 actions will allow you to move across the board, using city cards to travel quicker, but hopefully not too much because you need those cards to cure diseases. If you have 5 cards with matching colors, then you can travel to a research station where you can discard all of them and cure the disease of the corresponding color. To aid in this, you have an action that lets you discard a city card to put a research station there. You have to be in the city to do it. You have to construct it yourself, but you could do that. You could trade a city card to one of your friends if you happen to be in the city that's on the card. And I realize that I'm saying city and card a lot. We're getting to the end of me saying that, I promise. Once all 4 diseases are cured, you win! Sounds easy enough, but so does convincing people that vaccines actually work. In practice, it's not so simple. There's actually several different ways to lose. If you run out of disease cubes of a certain color, you lose. If you run out of city cards when you go to draw them, then you lose. Losing is pretty common. At the end of your turn, you'll draw some infection cards, which will force you to place disease cubes on the cities that you draw. If a city already has 3 disease cubes on it, then an outbreak happens, the hospitals run out of ventilators, and you place a disease cube on each adjacent city instead. After 8 outbreaks, you lose the game. That might not sound so bad because there's only 1 infection card for each city and they go directly into the discard pile once they're drawn, but life isn't easy, and the epidemic cards are here to remind us. Before you even touch the infection deck, you'll probably want to get some hand sanitizer ready, but you'll also have to draw 2 city cards. These are helpful because, like I mentioned before, they help you move across the board quicker and cure diseases. But sprinkled throughout the city card deck are these green little bastards called epidemic cards. If you're unfortunate enough to draw one of these, then the first thing you'll do is increase the amount of infection cards you draw each turn. You then take the bottom card of the infection deck, put 3 disease cubes on that city, then take that card and the entire infection discard pile, shuffle them together, and put that on top of the infection deck. And that's before you draw infection cards for your turn. Like a man that sweats Vaseline, you could see how this gets out of hand. Pandemic has a lot of things to praise. It's quick and easy to learn, its mechanics are unique, and it constantly leaves you on edge because any excuse to celebrate comes with the giant asterisk that it could all go to shit in 1 turn. That said, it does have some key flaws that relegate it to a niche role. After you've played it a bunch, the game loop becomes repetitive. It's less about adapting to interesting conundrums and more about maintaining stasis. As you and your friends get better, the opportunities to save catastrophic situations get distilled down into the 2 extremes of breezing your way to victory and farting out all your organs. Pandemic and Portal 2 are both games that start with P, but they're also similar in the sense that they're not fun to play with someone that's already good at it. They're either going to tell you exactly what to do, which will leave you feeling as useless as the chief medical advisor under Donald Trump, or they're going to silently resent your stupidity, like the mother of the average anime fan. I understand I just alienated a large part of my audience there. But yeah, I barely have an audience, so I don't care. As such, I think that Pandemic is an excellent game for beginners, but nothing more. I do have fond memories playing it, though, with my brother, where we'd roleplay as two Chinese scientists that accidentally knocked over a couple of virus-containing vials just so we could have a little victory in defeat. I like it, but I can't play it anymore because it's lost its luster. If Pandemic is a buck-toothed nerd that only holds relevance as a consistent source of lunch money, then Pandemic Legacy is the same nerd who shows up to his high school reunion in a Lamborghini Aventador with Scarlett Johansson under his mountainous bicep. Pandemic Legacy adds, get this, legacy elements. Which means just like severe cases of COVID, it'll have permanent consequences. You'll be sticking stickers on the board, ripping up cards, opening up secret boxes of goodies as you progress through the story, and the whole thing will come to an inevitable end, leaving you with a satisfying and wrapped up narrative, as well as a useless box of cardboard that you can't play with anymore. But you can use it if you want to make board game reviews. When I say glow up, I'm talking Cherenkov radiation. I'm talking solar flares, baby. I'm talking sticking your head in the microwave for 15 minutes. Pandemic Legacy is not just an improvement on the original. It's one of the few times where me and Board Game Geek actually agree, because I think it's one of the best games ever made. In the first Pandemic, the stakes were high, but they were artificially inflated. Sure, it was like skipping through a field of landmines, but once you got all your limbs blown off, you could just duct tape them back on, set the game up, and play it again. It was designed for that. The little inefficiencies in your decision making weren't worth thinking about, because the consequences for your actions only had one note. Game over. Try again. In Pandemic Legacy, playing inefficiently might lose you the round, but it also might cause Spain to not exist. That's just the start, too. Since this is a legacy campaign, that means the credits have to roll at some point, which means all of your resources are finite. You will only get a certain amount of actions, play a certain amount of city cards, fall face first into a certain amount of hypodermic needles before the game is over. The brutal mechanics from the first game are still there, so you are going to be tiptoeing through every single decision that you and your friends make. Contingency plans left and right, baby. Folks that are experts at Pandemic don't need to worry about a dry experience, because the boxes of goodies that you open along the way will provide you with a whole bunch of cool new toys to play with, as well as a whole bunch of new nightmares to consult your therapist about. In either case, the game's rules are always in flux, forcing you to adapt in interesting ways and rewarding you for making the most out of the tools you've been given. I only have 2 criticisms for Pandemic Legacy, and they're really more nitpicky than they are, correct. For one, the story isn't very good. It is difficult to create an emotionally potent experience using a shared medium such as a board game, but it frequently falls into basic nerd bullshit that's as tropey as a stomach. Wait, no, that's tripe. That said, there is a lot of emotional appeal in the organic narratives. My friends and I had tons of fun creating our characters, naming them, coming up with their backstories and their relationships to each other, crying when they sacrificed themselves to save Singapore. Honestly, that more than makes up for the faults with the core narrative. Second, and this is an inherent issue with almost every legacy game, it takes a while. I didn't play any other board games in the several months that it took me to work through this one, and oh, did it pain me so. Not searing, debilitating abdominal pain. More like guilty, shameful pleasure, like when your parents find out why you spend so much time in the linen closet sitting on the washing machine. Pandemic Legacy deserves the exclusivity it demands. I'd say it's the perfect game to play with your roommates during lockdown, but I guess I was a little late to that one, huh? In short, Pandemic is a great game for beginners. Pandemic Legacy Season 1 is a great game. Oh shit.